All right, finally figured this out. So, yesterday I posted that the Pokemon team was having issues with me recording over the video, narrating it, and that was because I was using a different program. So this time I'm using OBS. So we're gonna get into this time, and there shouldn't be any issues this time around. So we start our first battle. My team's Iron Valorant, Indeedee Female, Inteleon, Incineroar, Iron Boulder, and Iron Hands. He starts Regieleki with a light screen. So Regieleki is a light screen user, light clay, light screen, reflect, rapid spin, and volt switch. So you can see I knocked off his band or his clay. Drain punch. He switches to volt switch. He switches to magnet zone. Now, me being the smart guy I am, I forget that Iron Valor is weak to steel, so I keep fighting, even though I go for a fairy type move here, and he hits me with a flash cannon and it kills me with a life orb. I don't think I've ever seen a magnet zone with a life orb before. First time for everything. Next, I switched to Iron Boulder. My initial thought, I guess, was to go for Sacred Sword. Unfortunately, because of Light Screen Reflect, actually doesn't do as much damage as it should. And I forgot, once again, about the whole weak to steel thing, so I kind of put Iron Boulder in harm's way. But I go for a second Sacred Sword, and he's down. It's probably the most close battle in the entire arc of videos I'm doing. Aqua Jet. Forgot Beartic warned that, so he one-shots me. Or finishes me off, I should say. Switch to Iron Hands. I go for a Fake Out, which always goes first as long as it's your first turn with a Pokemon, and it makes it flinch. And then he goes for a Close Combat after his Light Screen wears off, which does about 30% damage. I go for a Drain Punch, which almost completely heals Iron Hands. Next, it switches to Mouse Hold. So this is interesting. Mouse Hold has a move called Population Bomb. It does damage up to 10 times hits. A hit. So I go for a Drain Punch. He actually tears to the ghost, so I can't hurt him. Then I'm like, okay, I know what he's going to do. So I swap to Incineroar. Incineroar has Intimidate, which lowers the attack, and it also has the Rocky Helmet. When you use a multi-move against someone who has a Rocky Helmet, it actually hits them every single time that you hit them. So he got actually really lucky here, because if he would have hit the full 10 times, or how many times he would have been alive, it actually would have killed him. But instead he goes for a Bite. I guess that's all he had left. And then I go for a Dark Slayer to put down Mouse Hold. Mouse Hold is probably the most frightening Pokemon on this team besides Kyogre. He switches in the fire, or the Fighting Tauros. And he goes for a Stone Edge, and that knocks Incineroar out. I switch to Indeedee. Psychic Surge goes up, so moves like the move I'm going to use now. He goes for a Stone Edge. It's going to do about half my HP. Spinning Force gets powered up because of the terrain. And he switches back to Regieleki. So at this point, I was like, okay, Regieleki can't have that many attack moves. So actually, he's going to go put up both screens again. I decided to go for a double Calm Mind, because I figure, well, his Kyogre is probably going to know Water Spout. And I figured after he put up the second thing, he would just use Volt Switch to swap out. And he actually does. So I go for Expanding Force to damage Kyogre, so Kyogre can't use the Choice Scarf Water Spout combo, because now his HP is too low for it to be extremely effective. So instead, he goes for Order Pulse, which is boosted by the weather, and it knocks Indeedee out. Weirdness, the train's gone, so I switch to Inteleon. I tear it to water to do a little bit more damage, and I go for Snipe Shot. But he goes for Order Pulse for a Snipe Shot, combined with Scope Lens, and Inteleon's Sniper ability basically means if I get a critical hit, the Scope Lens increases that, and when I get a critical hit with Sniper, it does extra damage. So I managed to finish off his Kyogre. Now, I knew Inteleon was dead. I knew he was going to go for a Volt Switch or a Rapid Spin, so he goes for Volt Switch to put down Inteleon. Unfortunately, because all it knows is Volt Switch and Rapid Spin, and it's meant to be a screen user, there is no way he's going to have enough power to put my Iron Hands down, so he just tries to go for Rapid Spin, which increases his speed, but it doesn't matter because the Drain Punch is going to finish him off. Battle number 2. So this one is pretty much, after about three or four rounds in, it's actually a one Pokemon sweep. It's almost a 6-0, but ends up being like a 5-0, I believe. So I go for a Swords Dance. I thought eventually I was going to go for Sticky Web. He doesn't. Actually goes for a Volt Switch. And he swaps into Gliscor. He figured, well, I have Earthquake, so I'm fine. So the Toxor poisons him, and he has Poison Heal, so he'll damage instead of taking it every turn more than the leftovers would do. So he goes for a Stealth Rock. And I go for a second Mighty Cleave, which is powerful enough because of the double attack to knock him out. So I'm going to let you know that the Swords Dance, Quark Drive Speed, Iron Bolt is very powerful. Unfortunately, he actually had a counter for it, so I go for a Sacred Sword that almost completely knocks him out, but then he goes for a Foul Play, which does more damage because my attack has been boosted. So that's the one Pokemon I lose. And then this just becomes... I didn't know how far I'd get with this, but I switched to Iron Valorant. Now, I know that he's a Dark type, so I actually Terra Dark here, and I go for a Drain Punch, I believe. No, I should go for a Swords Dance. So if he was to use Foul Play here, it would not do much damage. Well, it will do some damage because of the boosted attack. He goes for Wish, and he swaps to Galvantula. I guess I thought maybe he could get around me. So I go for a Drain Punch here, thinking he was going to stay in with him. I get all my HP back. And then I go for a knockoff after his wish comes through, and then I basically just finish him off because Galvantula's defenses are not that great. Switch to Tinkaton. Tinkaton might have been a problem, but I go for a knockoff to get rid of his Assault Vest. And then he goes for a Play Rough, which actually is not enough damage. They did Tinkaton dirty in this game. Tinkaton should have had more power, or at least more speed. So I go for a Drain Punch, knock out Tinkaton. He switches to Typhlosion. Now keep in mind, you can keep an eye on speed stats. So let's say that he goes for a Terra here. So let's say that let's say my speed is 424, and his speed is 426. You gotta take into consideration my speed is being increased, so I was able to outspeed him and one-shot him. So the Terra was almost useless. I go for a Spirit Break here to one-shot his Corridon. And then I basically I think I go for another Drain Punch to finish off his Umbreon, and that's a 5-0, which is pretty good considering I'm using a theme team here. Battle number 3, I believe this is the one against the kid that was just starting to play who could use, who was only using 5 mons. Nope, this is the other guy. So this guy is probably the most interesting one in this entire game, in this entire video because of how he worked it. So I go for a Dark Pulse. He flinched. Went for another Dark Pulse. He did not flinch, but he goes for a Grass Knot, which I thought was going to kill Inteleon, but he actually didn't. So I was like, okay, what do I do here? So I go for a Dark Pulse to finish off this one. I know for a fact that Inteleon's faster, and I found out very much later that all his Pokemon have the same item. So there's no risk about them being faster than me at any point. I go for a Flip Turn. I switch to Incineroar. I figured Incineroar wouldn't be around very long anyway. Plus, I knew he was going to use Grass Knot, so Incineroar takes very little damage from that. And he actually gets hurt by the Rocket Helmet. I didn't think Grass Knot did direct contact damage for that to work. Go for a Fake Out, makes him flinch. And then I decided to go for a... What'd I go for here? I think I went for a Darkest Lair. He goes for Chilling Water, which lowers my attack stat by 100% chance by 1 stage. I figured, well, Incineroar is gone, so I just let him use Chilling Water to finish me off. Next, I switch back into Inteleon, and I go for a Flip Turn. No, I go for a Dark Pulse, and then a Flip Turn again. That way I can deal damage and keep Inteleon for a little bit later. So he's going to go for a Grass Knot, so I go for a Flip Turn. And I'm going to switch to Indeedee here. Yes. Psychic Surge activates. He goes for a Grass Knot. So this is something I didn't know Dodo could actually learn. He goes for a Chilling Water, lower my attack. It doesn't really matter much. I go for a Calm Mind. My strategy was to go for a double Calm Mind then attack, but he actually has Clear Smog, which does small damage and resets my stats. So you see me go for a second Calm Mind because I didn't know he had it. So he goes for yet another Clear Smog to get rid of it. I go for a Energy Ball here. I probably should have gone for a Psychic for the Expanding Force, but I'm not sure if that would do enough damage or not, so I decided to just go for Energy Ball. I go for another Energy Ball. Golduck 3 is down. And then he swaps in. I figure Indeedee is not faster than Golduck in any situation, so I was like, okay, I'll just leave Indeedee in here and let her just... Maybe I'll get an Energy Ball off, and I don't. No, I do swap. I forgot. I did swap. I'm not sure why I swapped, though. It doesn't sound like something that I would actually do. He goes for a Grass Knot. I go for a Mighty Cleave. Iron Boulder was not going to survive this very long anyway with it being weak to both grass and water. So, I'm not trying to win any medals here either. So I switch back to Inteleon. So I actually tried to go for a Dark Pulse in the Flip Turn combo here, but you actually see I don't do enough damage to this one. So he goes for a Grass Knot, and Inteleon is down. So I will say this is a pretty even battle, but now I switch to Iron Valorant. And I figure I had to knock him out quick because he has Chilling Water, so I go for a knockoff. You can see that one has an Expert Belt. I think that turn 1 on my next, on this 5th Golduck, I believe I go for another knockoff. You see he has another Expert Belt. He goes for a Psychic that does a lot of damage. I go for a Drain, I Terra Dark, and then I go for a Drain Punch. which actually does enough damage to knock him out. I get a little HP back. Now, you remember how I said that his dog has a 6? This one actually says 7, so he skips 6 for some reason. So now I go for another Drain Punch, critical hit. I get almost all my HP back. He can't go for Psychic, so he goes for Clear Smog, which gives a critical hit and resets my stats if I had any. But the Cork Drive does not count as a stat increase, so it doesn't actually work on that. But I got him, and 3-0. And I believe this is the one. Yes, this is the kid who, if you watch the chat real quick, he's going to say he just learned to play. So I start with Incineroar, he starts with Dragonite. Intimidate, Inner Focus stops Intimidate, which I think is really weird. He goes for a sub. I go for a Parting Shot that lowers attack stat, because Dragonite can be dangerous if you let him. I swap to Inteleon, because Inteleon has Ice Beam. He restores a little HP with leftovers, and then I go for an Ice Beam that gets rid of the substitute. He goes for a Body Slam. And I thought that might paralyze me, because that's how my luck is. I go for another Ice Beam, but he switches to a Zoom Arrow. Which, because how Inteleon is set up, I have no moves that are actually going to be anywhere effective against a Zoom Arrow. So I could have gone for a Flip Turn, but for some reason I decided to stay in and try to get a Snipe Shot in. Several Snipe Shots, actually. He goes for a Whirlpool here. It traps me so I couldn't swip out. I don't know if Flip Turn would let me swap or not. Because Whirlpool is one of those moves it's not used a lot. I go for another Snipe Shot, no critical hit. He goes for a Supersonic, which is another one of those moves that you don't see a lot being used. I know the Whirlpool Pair Song is a pretty common thing with the Zoom Arrow. Inteleon hurts himself in confusion, and he goes for a Grass Knot. I'm trying to figure out why he took so long to use a Grass Knot, though. Like, he could have probably ended me pretty quickly there. Switch to Indeedee. Indeedee, I go for Expanding Force that knocks out a Zoom Arrow. Switch to Dragonite. I go for another Expanding Force. He tried to go for Extreme Speed, but actually Psychic Rain blocks all priority moves. And I guess he didn't read when that happened because he tries to do it immediately again. And I tell him that you can't use that move on Psychic Rain, even though it literally tells you that. So I'm guessing maybe he wasn't reading right, or he just wasn't paying attention. I terrorize the fighting to make sure I can avoid if he goes for a Dark Pulse. I go for Expanding Force, immediate knockout. Dragon Pulse next. I go for a Expanding Force here. He goes for Will-O-Wisp for some reason. I'm not sure why. Dragon Pulse owns that HP. He goes for a U-turn here. And then he switches to the most interesting Luna Ula I've never fought. Now keep in mind, I don't fight this Pokemon a lot. But this Pokemon, it's an interesting set. It's not a very good set, but it's interesting. So I switch to Iron Boulder. I get poisoned because of the spikes he set up earlier. Boost Drive increases my speed. He goes for Reflect. I believe I run a Swords Dance here. Now I actually go for a Mighty Cleave, which actually doesn't do much damage. He goes for a Calm Mind. So far he's actually a Reflect user plus a Calm Mind. So I was expecting the last move to be something like a syndrome like Moongeist Speed, but no, it's actually Blizzard. And he has a Life Orb, so it's a very interesting set. It actually does hurt my team a little bit here. So I can't say it wasn't like the worst set ever, because no, wait. Yeah, he only has either Reflect. Which one did he use? I think he used Reflect, and then he has Calm Mind, Blizzard, and Substitute. Timur does not work on him, so he goes for a Blizzard. Barely does any damage. And he loses all his HP because of the Life Orb. Which Life Orb is kind of an interesting strat by itself. So he switches to Dragapult. And Reflect goes away. I believe I just finish him off here with a Darkest Lariat. He actually goes for a Hex, because he's faster, but it doesn't do quite enough damage. And that's a 4-0 right there. Battle number 5. So this one was interesting because of Terrapagos. Terrapagos has one of the stupidest abilities in this entire game, and it's really hard to get around sometimes. So I go for a Fake on his Ninetales. So I think his intention was to switch to Gorging Fire here to increase its fire damage. No, it was to use Photosynthesis. So interesting about Photosynthesis, if it's used in sunny day, your Photosynthesis will actually wear off after the sun goes away. So he switches to Gouging Fire. I'm like, okay, this might be a problem. He has Photosynthesis attacks, he goes for a Dragon Dance. I'm like, at least I can lower his attack a little bit. So I go for a Parting Shot that lowers his attack and special attack. So his speed's still up. I switch to my Iron Hands. So this is kind of a toss-up depending on what he was going to do. I believe he goes for another Dragon Dance here. But I go for a Fake Out, which does a little bit of damage. And then I was trying to think what else I could do, so I just start hitting with Drain Punch, I believe. Yeah. that does a good amount of damage, 39%. Now he starts going for a move called Breaking Swipe. Now his Pro Senses wore off, so his attack is now whatever it was after the Dragon Dance. I go for a Drain Punch here. I was just assuming that eventually I was eventually going to knock him out anyway, because I don't think Gorging Fire has any way to heal itself. So I just go for a Draining Punch until I manage to knock him out, which actually is only a couple turns later. So Iron Hand is kind of weak here, so I was just debating what I wanted to do. So I'm going to try to explain how Terrapox works to you guys. In this form, he actually takes less damage from the first attack he takes. It's like a not very effective damage. So you're going to see the Terra Shell, it says not very effective, but it did make him flinch. So I was trying to think what else I could possibly do. So it goes for another Calm Mind. I believe I go for a Parting Shot here. Yeah, I want to keep his attack down as much as possible. So now I swap to Iron Boulder. Quark Drive increases my speed. Sacred Sword, super effective. But now he's going to Terra into that other form here after a second. He actually Ice Beamed me and I got frozen. He transforms to the Stellar type. He gets HP back. I thaw it out, luckily. And I go for a Sacred Sword. Super effective. But Stellar is... I still don't understand how Stellar actually works, but he goes for Terra Starstorm, which does a buttload of damage. Like a lot. So I switch to Incineroar, lower his attack again. Fake him out again. And I think I go for a Fair Blitz here to knock him out. And I don't remember if it works or not. Goes for Terra Starstorm. And Starstorm was a lot of power, but I go for a Flare Blitz and that puts him down. I didn't move my phone away because it's going off. I don't want you guys to hear it constantly over this. So he goes for a Sneasel. He goes for a Toxic here, which makes me question why he would do that, because Incineroar was almost already dead as it was. He could have gone for any other movement, it probably would have knocked me out. Focus Dash Sneasel, so I switch to Iron Hands. Fake Out. That knocks him out and causes everything. So now he switches to Malamar. So Malamar is an interesting Pokemon because it has a very rare ability called Contrary. So instead of, if a Pokemon loses its stats, it actually gains how much it said. So its superpower increases attack and defense instead of loses it. So I probably could end Malamar a lot earlier if I was actually trying, but I knew that Malamar was not that good. It's good when you're, like, for example, superpower is really good, but because you can't normally buff it normally, that means you can't use, like, Calm Mind, you can't use Amnesia or anything like that, because it'll just decrease the stat instead. So it goes for several superpowers. I get knocked out. I was debating what I should really do, so I switched to Inteleon, because Inteleon is a special attacker. I Terra to water, and I go for a Snipe Shot, which doesn't do quite enough damage. He goes for another superpower, and that knocks Inteleon out in one shot. But Malamar's speed is very, very low. Pretty low, so I switch to Iron Valor, and I go for a Spirit Break to make sure I can take him down. Because Iron Valor is still a physical attacker. Switches to Bundle, his last Pokemon. And I believe I go for a Terra. Do I go for Terra here, or do I just go for a Drain Punch? He goes for an Ice Beam. It does a lot of damage. 83.1. I go for a Drain Punch. Now I'm trying to figure out why his Ice Beam only did... No, his Ice Beam actually did not matter. I thought it didn't for a second. This was actually another close battle. I switched to Indeedee. Surge activates. Indeedee actually has a good amount of special defense. It goes for a Hydro Pump, but it still doesn't do quite enough. Expanding Force puts him down. And battle number 6, the last battle. So this one I didn't like, because Arceus, Eternatus, Moody, Skullvillain, Shaman. Palmont's interesting. So it goes for a Swords Dance here. I knew that he had a extreme speed Arceus, so I was like, okay, I'm not worried. So I just go for a couple expanding force. I switched to Iron Boulder, just in case he was going to try to hit me with another move. He goes for extreme speed. Doesn't even work. So that's twice in this video that we've had someone use extreme speed and it doesn't work. I Terra to the Rock type to make sure he doesn't do anything. He can go for anything else. And my prediction was spot on, because he goes for a Shadow Ball, which would have done more damage. And now I believe I just tear through his entire team. He goes for Street Speed again. It still doesn't work. You know, I don't understand, like, people do, like, are they playing on phones and they can't read that small, or what's going on there? So he gets a little HP left with the leftovers. He swaps to Calyrex. I go for a Sacred Sword. This is interesting because I don't know if my speed is actually higher than Calyrex here, but I actually go first on a turn. I don't know, maybe he didn't have a choice card, maybe he had like a choice something else, or he had a different item. But I go for a Mighty Cleave, and then it immediately knocks him out. He asked me why Spectre Rain blocks it. I was like, that's because it does. Goes for Protect. Mighty Cleave goes through all protects, so him putting on Protect was pretty useless. That's what makes Iron Boulder kind of dangerous because he can go right. He's basically a stall destroyer. Go for another Mighty Cleave, and I believe he forfeits right here. Thought so. Anyway, this was this video. Thank everyone for watching. This is the Pokemon Fan 1993 signing off. I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, take care. Bye bye.